Thank you for joining us for this online session, an introduction to the British Columbia Social Procurement Initiative, or Bcspi. I'm Rob Fisher, Bcspi Project Coordinator. I'm very pleased to be joined by Tori Williamson, Bcspi Education and Training Coordinator and Director of Communications and Engagement for Bisocial Canada. Now, to get started, Tori and I would like to open with a territorial acknowledgement. I live and work here on the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and Tori lives and works on unceded traditional and ancestral Squamish territories. Together we endeavour to make this more than just words, and we invite you to also consider what it means to live on traditional lands in your community and what efforts we can all take to repair and improve our relations with Indigenous people locally and globally. So the British Columbia Social Procurement Initiative, or Bcspi, formerly known as the Coastal Communities Social Procurement Initiative, is a low-cost, high-value program that provides local governments and institutional purchasers across British Columbia with the training, expertise, and support that they need to integrate social procurement practices in order to unlock additional social value from their existing spending. The initiative is unique in Canada as a regional approach, and Bcspi members are leading the way in changing the systems and culture of institutional procurement. But since the launch of the initiative, Bcspi members have realised over $200 million in social procurement spend by adding that additional social value to their purchasing. And this has generated significant community benefits from their procurement dollars at a time when their local economies have needed it most. Using Bcspi training, tools and resources, members have piloted social procurement in over 50 projects across the region, from smaller credit card spends to goods and services tenders to major construction projects. So when members join Bcspi, they're supported by a pathway towards implementation that we call the member journey. This follows a progression that starts out with onboarding and getting familiar with the online member portal. The next step is to meet with a member of the Bcspi team and plan the journey towards implementation. This includes taking a look at existing procurement policies and procedures and looking at strategic plans and social goals to map out social procurement objectives. Following this, we'll let members access the Bcspi templates, guides, and other key resources, and then we train their teams, putting members of staff through Bcspi core training. Once trained, members can then look towards their upcoming purchasing to identify an opportunity to pilot social procurement. Once a pilot is identified, the Bcspi team provides coaching and advice to ensure the correct language is reflected in the pilot RFP or other tender document, and then the member launches the pilot. That's when the responses come in, evaluate the bids, and award the contract. At this point, we check back in to see how things have gone. What lessons did we learn, and what went as expected, and what came as a surprise? The member is then able to adjust and go out to pilot again, and this process is repeated until a successful combination of factors is achieved to provide maximum social value in the procurement outcomes. At this stage, the member is ready to move to full implementation, and adding social procurement considerations to their purchasing policy is recommended. This is also where Bcspi can provide assistance, not only in drafting new policy language, but we can provide training to staff who are going to be implementing this new policy. Now at this stage, the member's policy is in place and social value criteria is going into most of their procurement. It's time to start engaging their local supplier community and building these suppliers' capacity to understand how to respond to social procurement opportunities. Bcspi can also help here by offering supplier engagement resources and providing supplier training sessions through the member's local Chamber of Commerce or other economic development association. And last but not at all least, impact measurement. Now the member is doing social procurement and measuring the outcomes in their community. And to support that member journey, Bcspi members have access to a whole host of resources via the online membership portal. This includes best practice examples, templates and guides, including draft RFP and policy templates, access to consultation, coaching and support from the Bcspi team, access to the Bcspi core training and the webinar library, as well as an online resource library stocked with social procurement examples from Bcspi members and other communities. Members get a chance to join a thriving bi-monthly community of practice for peer learning and discussion, and also access to supplier engagement and impact measurement tools and resources. The 3 Bcspi core training sessions lay the foundations for social procurement implementation, from a full introduction to social procurement concepts with SP 101 to exploring opportunities for implementation in SP 201 and digging deeper into opportunities in larger construction and infrastructure projects with SP 301. Core training includes lecture-style learning, group exercises, working through procurement scenarios, real-world examples, and accompanying resources that include applicable templates and guides to help members get started with successful implementation. These core training sessions are also complemented by a training webinar library of over 15 pre-recorded sessions, covering everything from how to work with the trade agreements to best practice social procurement policy language, as well as a range of community case studies. And as we've mentioned, the initiative also provides supplier engagement resources to help members work with social value suppliers in their communities to build their capacity to be able to respond to and deliver on institutional procurement opportunities. This whole ecosystem approach recognizes that both purchasers and suppliers need to speak the same language and helps build bridges to lasting business relationships that can support local economies. To measure the impact of social procurement through Bcspi, the initiative has partnered with Royal Roads University to develop a region-wide impact measurement framework that aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Through this process, both staff from Bcspi members and the supplier community are engaged in developing meaningful and effective impact metrics and processes. So thanks to the support of the Government of British Columbia, Bcspi membership is now available to all local governments, regional districts, and institutional purchasers like health authorities and universities right across the province. The annual membership dues for governments to join Bcspi are population-based and equivalent to the same amount as you would pay to your local area of government association. This membership pricing model ensures that smaller rural communities are able to participate at low cost and still take advantage of the full range of membership services and resources. Significantly, now is the best possible time to join the initiative. Building on the success of the first 2 years, new members will join with all of the foundational work in place. Over 50 pilot projects already undertaken, a comprehensive library of templates developed, tons of great real-world examples, and a thriving community of practice all available to new members. So now we've had a chance to learn a little bit about the initiative itself. I'm going to hand over to Tori to talk a bit more about what social procurement is, what's possible, and how it can unlock additional social value from public sector purchasing.
Thanks, Rob. Social procurement is a growing practice from governments, corporations, and institutions to leverage additional value from existing purchasing. We can all acknowledge that our communities face many challenging and complex social and economic issues. These include issues like social isolation, employment challenges, welcoming newcomers, homelessness and addictions, skills gaps, and now, most recently with the pandemic, disproportionate impacts from the COVID-19 crisis. In Canada, the federal government alone spends $18 to $20 billion per year procuring goods and services, with 80% of that spend happening at the regional and local level. When you consider the total expenditures each year by the federal, provincial, and municipal governments, private households and firms, and the not-for-profit sector, that is a tremendous amount of purchasing power we can leverage to create more value for society while still creating economic value. On Vancouver Island, annual purchasing by local governments adds up to $1.6 billion, with $110 million spent on purchases under the $25,000 threshold. Construction is a major opportunity for social procurement. Over the next 10 years, the Canadian federal government will spend $180 billion on infrastructure investments. In June 2018, Infrastructure Canada made a commitment to social procurement by introducing the Community Employment Benefits Initiative. When we think about this purchasing, the traditional model of procurement is to focus on the economic value of the transaction. This includes value for the purchaser for goods and services bought and the dollar value paid to the supplier. Trading between communities has been around for thousands of years. In the 1960s and 70s, the negative environmental impacts from industry catalyzed the inclusion of environmental and green considerations into purchasing decisions. Now in the 2000s, from the noughts to the teens and now the 20s, we are seeing a growing recognition that the impacts on communities and on people can be factored into our purchasing decisions, and when we add a social value consideration to the procurement decision-making. When we include a social value component in the procurement equation, such as buying from a social enterprise or a local business, then the same market transaction transforms into a tool for shaping healthy, vibrant communities, a tool which can support our goals and vision for people and the planet. When we redefine procurement from merely an economic transaction into a tool for community transformation, we can harness the power of social procurement to help address critical social, economic, and environmental issues in our communities. Social procurement leverages our existing purchasing to generate the community capital that transforms diminished neighborhoods into healthy communities. The health of a community is not measured by economic value alone. Healthy communities require multiple types of capital, which are collectively referred to as community capital. There's economic capital, which is still important to facilitate our economies. There is the physical capital in the form of the natural and built environment. Cultural capital includes diversity and respect, opportunities for different voices and perspectives to be shared and celebrated. Human capital is education and skills which empower individuals and allow them to access more prosperity and well-paying employment. And last, but certainly not least, is social capital, the glue that holds our communities together through personal and professional relationships. Building community capital is the means for creating healthy communities. Traditional procurement practices have focused on success measured through creating stores of physical and economic capital. Social procurement changes that perspective, and procurement becomes more than merely a financial transaction. It becomes a tool for building community capital. Social procurement is encouraging a shift towards procurement based on achieving multiple outcomes in addition to maximizing financial value. Every purchase has an economic, environmental, and social impact, whether intended or not. When we focus on best value for money, procurement is much more than a financial transaction. Procurement becomes a tool for building healthy communities. The purchasing of goods and services is the acquisition of all the items that you currently purchase. This includes office supplies, catering, cleaning, printing, couriers, and more. Community benefit agreements are predetermined and defined social value outcomes that will be delivered as part of major infrastructure land development projects. Let's explore the possibilities these social procurement pathways can create. Within social procurement, there are 4 key opportunity areas. These are employment, skills and training, social value in the supply chain, and community development. These areas are key because you can take your high-level community goals, link them to these areas, and then ask for these social value outcomes in your procurement. There is huge potential for local impact when you consider the economic multiplier effect. Local BC found that for every $100 spent with a local office supply business, $63 is reinvested locally through things like wages, purchasing, philanthropy, and profits. Whereas for every $100 spent with a multinational corporation or big box store, only $14 is reinvested locally. We don't have data, but it seems very reasonable to assume that if you buy from a highly convenient online retailer, pretty much none of that money will recirculate locally and it will all leave your local economy. This small shift towards local purchasing can therefore have huge impact. Social enterprises are businesses with a central environmental, cultural, or social mission who reinvest the majority of net profits back into their mission. BC Housing implemented social procurement by including social value criteria on an RFP for junk removal. This led to a social enterprise in Vancouver, Clean Start BC, winning the contract and increasing their capacity to employ people with barriers. The contract enabled them to create more social value and community capital. Atira Property Management is another Vancouver social enterprise who wanted to explore the benefits of employing people with barriers. This study with Ernst & Young looked at the benefits versus the broader system costs and found that for every dollar spent to employ people facing barriers, there was a $4.13 social return on investment. This included costs associated with social assistance, local spending, social housing, criminal justice costs, health costs, and food banks and meal programs. Construction and infrastructure is a huge opportunity area for social procurement. Vancouver Island Construction Association found that on a $1 million contract, local suppliers created 3.6 jobs compared to 1.8 to 2.0 jobs with multinational corporation. That's double the amount of jobs just by working with local suppliers. When we speak about all of these benefits, we often hear the question, does it cost more? Bcspi member, the Comox Valley Regional District, had a community employment benefits requirement on their water treatment project. They found that there was no additional cost, and in fact, they were able to achieve double their targeted community employment benefits. And of course, we always ask the question, what about the trade agreements? Yes, social procurement is legal, and yes, the trade agreements do apply and require parameters for language and actions. You cannot restrict competition, but you can require community outcomes from all bidders. Trade agreements have exceptions for contracting with nonprofits, et cetera, and other organizations. And trade agreements also have financial thresholds that you can work your social procurement in between. All right, Rob, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Tori. So when we talk about the opportunity around social procurement and this initiative. Looking ahead, as we look into the BCSPI expansion across the province, what could be possible if by 2024, at least 100 local governments and institutional purchasers in BC have participated in BCSPI? What if these member governments and institutional purchasers are including social value outcomes in at least 50% of their procurement? What if social value suppliers and SMEs with no previous engagement with institutional purchasers have gained the capacity to bid and deliver on contracts? And what if BCSPI members are utilising a common impact measurement framework, demonstrating in full the local community impacts and benefits of their purchasing practices? When we think about the broader outcomes of social procurement, if it's adopted by governments and institutional purchasers across British Columbia, the opportunity for creating social value and community benefits from existing public sector procurement becomes an opportunity to build community capital that shores up local economies and addresses the social needs that communities identify as strategic priorities.